Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everyone. I am Wassim Younis, and I am really thrilled to be moderating the conference today. It's great to see so many of you from across the country and those who came from abroad. Trustees, faculty members, students, alumni, and distinguished guests. I'm pretty convinced that many of you have a story about education, how education changed their lives, because that's what education does when it is done right. I also believe that many of you are here because you want very much to go beyond understanding education-based problems. You simply want to provide solutions for these problems. I do understand also that you aim at leading changes through education and in education. There are some common beliefs that hold us together. I want to share some of these beliefs together with you. Well, it is important what we do, but it is also important for you to know why we do that. The educators community believes that every child deserves a high quality education. It is what each generation owes to the one that follows, regardless of where the child is born, the color of skin, whether he can hear or she can see, whether he sleeps in a castle or she sleeps in a shelter. That child deserves a high quality education. Education is also a national security of our time. It is the economic prosperity of our time. It is an issue fundamental to our identity as citizens. All of us are here because we are dedicated to change the world through education. And no, it's not a gimmicky package because we have a shared sense of a mission. I have always believed in eureka moments, and perhaps such moment might surface today in one of our lectures. But make no mistake, there is much work to be done in education. And perhaps because of this, some might say that education schools are part of the problem but not part of the solution. Is it indeed? But those who share this opinion are not the ultimate exclusive guardians of information, and usually have a little information of what we have done and almost no idea of what we are doing. President of Al-Qasemi, Professor Bashar Said, and the Dean of the Faculty of Education, the head of the conference, Dr. Maram Masarwi. I am talking about our triple plan, strategic plan for enhancing education, which is cultivating leaders, innovators, leading innovators, collaborating on questions that matter, and communicating with the field. This is our recipe for success. But that's not all, ladies and gentlemen. In the 2 days of the conference, we are not going to play the blame game, nor to point fingers. We are going to hear some of the finest minds of scholars, all but all dedicated to reimagining a better future for humanity and a better future for our children. Had we known exactly the features of our identity, out of the belief that there is a consensus on this matter, and that our goals are common and crystal clear, I think perhaps Dr. Maram Masarwi, the head of the conference, would not have contemplated for a while or longer and conceptualized the urgent need of articulating the very notion, the very idea, the very concept of this conference. We could have, as accepted these days, written on Waze or our navigational GPS, a better future for humanity. And Mr. Waze, courtesy, will take us there. Believe it or not. Is it indeed? I am cynically skeptical, exactly like you. Alas, the way to nowhere and oblivion is often paved with allegedly good intentions. But because education is so lofty and that sublime, and cannot be solely seen as a virtue-specific bonanza, saturated with idealism and unprocessed values, it becomes a must, therefore, to determine what is meant by community, to determine what is meant by culture, and to determine also what is meant by society. And try, in effect, to provide the diagnosis to the socio-political trends and the conflicting powers working within. This is our ultimate work and job. The history of old and modern politics reads loudly. If you don't politicize politics, then the latter will definitely do the job. It will politicize you. Our inhabited sphere does not stand any vacuum, and it cannot be waiting the triumph of the sons of light over the sons of darkness. Simply, we cannot wait. Therefore, we have a moral obligation to act, and now. When it comes to education, there should be no sacred cows, at least in my eyes. And unlike Lawrence of Arabia's 7 pillars of wisdom, we cannot simply leave humanity uncrowned, because, as you know, humanity is the creme de la creme. And I hope I'm not here insulting any alien from another galaxy if happens to be hanging out here, because the most important thing for us is indeed humanity. Ladies and gentlemen, no deus ex machinas can guarantee salvation for humanity is completely far from tyranny, corruption, breach of trust, oppression, embezzlement, and deception. Therefore, these things cannot be simply eliminated only by the rule of law and jurisprudence by and large. Scholars, through education, can definitely bestow enlightened universal values, which serve to restrict and control all sorts of carte blanches, even in democratic regimes. For democracy is not solely the rule of the majority. Rather, it is actually the obligation of the majority to raise to the level of occasion and not be biased against minorities all over the world. This is the function. This is how democracy should serve. We need a moral compass to permanently call our social tunes, and pardon me for my figurative language here for a while, not only technical checks and balances, and this can only be achieved, I believe, exactly like you, by educators. When? While educating for universal values. Distinguished guests, pardon my naivete, but the intellectual noblesse oblige. And in a challenging fashion, I may ask, to what extent it is common to think of Chomsky's relativism theory from an Occidentalist perspective, and Edward Said's Orientalism, which revolutionized the study of the Middle East and helped in shaping post-colonial theory, is something to laugh at? For sure, no. Yet, we can definitely criticize both Said, his book, and his theory. Why, when we think of the Middle East, for example, we have a preconceived notion of what kind of people live there, what they believe, how they act. In fact, the way we acquire knowledge is not always innocent. It is not naive, and it is not always objective, but the end result of a process that reflects certain interests, looking through a lens that distorts the actual reality of people. Perhaps Said himself was found in a place that did not enable him to objectively articulate the very notion of Orientalism, America, the stronghold of capitalism. This is the point in my eyes. And how about Huntington's Clash of Civilization? Is it a myth, or it is a prophecy that will come true? Has Bernard Lewis really understood what went wrong with Muslims? And how does Hisham Sharabi's neo-patriarchy relate to Fukuyama's Last Man in the End of History? Is our human civilization saturated with spears, or these are solely the shadows of lances? And how about political correctness? While coining in new words and terms, Islamophobia. Why and what? Is it completely naive talking about Islam, the religion, instead of talking about Muslimophobia, the people who simply misinterpret the right teachings of Islam, and in order to promote their shallow, hollow, weak, and very, very treacherous political agenda? And how about other issues which are related to, or which relate to education? Should we consider them in these 2 days of the conference? Unless the above mentioned, the earlier questions I raised, are dealt with appropriately and under scrutiny, I believe that all custodians of the Holy Mosque and all custodians of the Holy Churches and all custodians of the Holy Synagogues will be catapulted, but forever, in Rashid Khalid's golden cage of nationalism, isn't it? And how does Ibn Khaldun's explanatory notes of Asabiyya align with Barbara Tuchman's The March of Folly and self-destruction mechanism, and when? In the year 1984. And I'm not talking about the year, I'm talking about the book. The big brother is always watching, George Orwell. This is a sort of an academic uproar that people who deal with education must relate to. But in education, like in education, we cannot afford being mediocre, nor we can afford being myopic. Finally, and in order to summatively relate to the key axis of today's conference, I want to quote an excerpt from Thomas Friedman's The Luxus and the Olive Tree. Friedman says, "You cannot be a complete person alone. You can be a smart person alone. You can be a rich person alone, but you cannot be a complete person alone. For that, you must be part of and rooted in an olive grove." Thank you.